Hello and welcome to another album analysis. In today's video we're looking at the 6th studio album from the American band Paramore titled This Is Why. This has probably been one of the most anticipated albums of early 2023. It's an album that everybody has been talking about, everybody's been wanting to get to hear, see exactly where the band would go with their sound. And we definitely see a bit of a shift, a bit of a change from the singles we have heard from this album so far. We've already been given a very interesting mix looking at lots of different styles. This album is certainly going to have a very personal touch to it, and we saw that actually through the singles we have seen from the album so far. It's something that the band have done with many of their albums. After Laughter looked at a lot of mental health issues that Hayley Williams had been struggling with, and it's looking like this album is going to continue touching on those trends of revolving around her life as she remains the focal point for this band. And whilst it may be a personal album for her, it isn't going to limit itself on its accessibility to its audience, because many of the songs are going to have a lot of ambiguity in, or certainly global application to a lot of the people that are giving it a listen. So without further ado, let's take a look at it track by track. Opening the album we do have the title track, and this is the first time the band have ever done this. So 6 albums in, finally we are getting a title track, and this song does sound a bit similar to some of the music we did here on After Laughter. Much more poppy, much more upbeat, and quite snappy as well. And the lyrics are also quite ambiguous. They could tie in with the idea of maybe being a shut-in, so linking it to that COVID idea, but it also does touch on broader aspects such as how humans do treat each other. But for Hayley Williams, it's the public pressure of being the frontwoman of one of the biggest bands over the sort of past 14 to 16 years, and the influence that she's had on a lot of people. And it's shown through the lyrics as well, showing about this is why I don't leave the house. She doesn't like that public pressure. It can be too much to handle at times. And musically, it was great to see them kind of continue the After Laughter style, because there was some really interesting pop elements on that, and it certainly gives a great way to open the album, to tie off the previous album and open into this one. Then we head directly into the news. Now, this is a song that had very short, shunted lyrics, and I don't think this plays to Hayley Williams' strengths. We are going to see it on a couple of tracks on this album, but I think she's much stronger because of her range when she's able to play a lot more. And it's something that was inspired on this track because they took a lot of influence from Block Party's Silent Alarm. It's very similar to Banquet, one of the biggest songs that band have released, and it's had more of an Indies 2000 sound. It had a much punchier pace, didn't really allow for those lyrics and those notes to be really drawn out. It was quite interesting though to see them tying back to an earlier style, really trying to take on something new. And the band did a great job of capturing that styling as well, showing some elements that Block Party really did in the early 2000s, and it also gives us the two sides that we may see on this album, and that's what they did with the singles, releasing as the first and second, really showing the two sides that the band are able to work with. Then we do move into Running Out of Time at track number 3, a song about being disorganised, and this was actually inspired by a visit to Taylor Swift's house, where she realised that there was loads of presents in her closet that were due to be sent out, but she'd never found the time to do so, and Hayley Williams really resonated with that, the idea that she just never finds the time to get things done. And it ties in a lot of the concepts around that, the idea of making excuses for not doing things, and some of the lyrics really do show this quite well. There was a fire, and then this kind of like in the background, this metaphorically, be there in 5, hyperbolically. I like some of the way she's played with the lyrics and really built the song outside of just being a standard I don't have time for anything. She's really thrown in some nice elements just to really develop the song and make it much more well-rounded than being just a standard track. I also really do like the funky guitar as well. It really adds a nice swing and a nice pace to this actual track, stops it from being quite bland. And we've also got this really interesting flicking of perspectives from where I'm really just changing the perspective and showing it from different people, and how it can not only affect you as a person if you're always running late and disorganised, how it can affect other people as well. So I like that it incorporates everybody, and I'm sure this is a song that everybody can resonate with, because everyone has those times where they're either late, they're running out of time, they don't have enough time to do everything. So really simple track that really just fits in quite well. Again, quite punchy as well. We're seeing that appear a lot on the first half of this album. Then at track 4 we do have C'est Comme Ça, which has a very interesting opening to it. Sounds like Hard Fi's Hard to Beat, very similar styling on that, which I did feel was a bit wasted. I feel like it was a cool element to throw into the track, but it only appears for the first 5-6 seconds, and then it just feels like, why is it there? Because you never touch on it ever again. I do also feel this is the very overly repetitive track in the chorus. chorus, and if you don't know what circumstance stands for, it basically means it is what it is. It's this idea of her going into middle life, not really being sure about where she currently stands, because she's not sure whether she wants to continue to live in the past or change and move into the future. So it's a lot of indecision thrown in this track, and it's also got this very spoken vocal style, almost like she's speaking to a psychiatrist or something like that. So we've got some really interesting elements, and just really kind of looking at her personal issues and her indecision on the future. And musically, we have also got some really interesting bits. We've got a very New Order style guitar that's thrown in, so maybe that would be referencing back to the year that Hayley Williams was born. So she was born in the 80s, so definitely a couple of little bits and pieces that really just tied together. I didn't feel this was probably the strongest track on the album. I think it was that over repetition that was just too much in the chorus. Despite it having a really simple and solid hook, it just got a bit too much on the ears by the time you were getting to the second or third minute, and if you're hearing this track over and over again, it's gonna get boring fast. Next up, we do have Big Man Little Dignity. Now this is a song that's all about men not being held accountable for their actions, and we have known that Hayley Williams has been very much an activist for a lot of different groups over recent years, so this is one that really does like to punch at that idea, and it does have less punch in the actual lyrics and a much more of a flowing vocal style. Like I said before, she's better when she can kind of play around in her vocal range and get to include a bit more. It does feel a bit dry when she's just has these short snappy lyrics, unless the song suits it with this really strong bite, but she hasn't really shown that in some of the tracks on the album so far. It does have some very soft layering and a really good pacing, and I like the contrast in this track as well of big, little, love, hate. You've got these opposites that really just pull together, and they also got this piano that's quite soft and subtle that's used, and it makes it much more ballad-like, and it adds a really nice interesting part to it because it kind of gives it this atmosphere. If you're in like a ballroom or something like that, you can really picture that this guy's kind of just being stood very suave, maybe holding a drink or something like that. So she sets the scene very well through the music, through the lyrics and the delivery on the track. Then we do move into You First, a song all about choosing good over evil, and it references songs such as Simmer from her solo album Petals for Armor. And one of the things I really do love about this track, it actually makes use of an old Cherokee parable known as Two Wolves, and that's referenced quite heavily in the lyrics. Which wolf wins? Talking about that, I guess it really depends. Just gotta wait and see which one's appetite's the biggest. It's this idea if you've got good and evil, it's in everybody, and one side always is stronger than the other, and that kind of defines your personality. And you can change. The wolf can get stronger or weaker depending on your kind of mentality and a lot of different external factors. So a really interesting way that they have thrown this together. Also is much more punchy and it has that bite, so I like it because it's that idea of the two wolves parable, and it's mixing in this very biting, snappy lyric delivery, which I think is really strong. Also, we do get some very drawn out lyrics and vocals in this song as well, which acts almost like a howl. So anything such as You is really drawn out at the end, kind of mimicking that idea and really pulling a lot of the song around this idea of wolves. I think is really, really smart. Something super simple, but it's just something that really helps to glue the track together and give it this extra strength that it needs. Then we do have Figure 8 at track number 7. Would have made more sense, I think, to put it 8, but that's only one small thing. A much more angsty track that feels a bit like an older track as well. It feels like something that would suit kind of fitting more around the 2010s, that early kind of time. It does make very good use of keyboard elements, and it's almost like this idea of being stuck in an endless loop. So using a figure 8 is the perfect metaphoric analogy for this kind of thing. There's lots of references in this track to no beginning and end. So it's this idea that somebody can try and change but is stuck in this endless loop. It can be the idea of depression as well, something she talks about heavily in After Laughter in a lot of the lyrics there. And it's this idea that you are stuck in an endless loop and you've got to kind of break the chain, you've got to break this figure 8 open to really escape from it. So again, very much more clever use of the metaphoric language on this compared to previous albums, and I do think the songwriting has been very, very strong up to now on this album. I think it's really good how she's kind of incorporating a lot of these ideas that are very personal to her. She's telling her story, but she's making it so accessible to lots and lots of people that are listening. Then at the real track 8, we do have Liar, a song all about Hayley Williams' denial of her feelings for bandmate Taylor York, and she suppressed them for quite a long time because she didn't feel that it was right. And this song is much more balladesque, it's much more of a love song, and I love this because it shows the strength of Hayley's vocals because she's allowed to play around in this track. She's able to go for the high and low notes, really just draw everything out, and I think it's really strong because that's something that she's able able to do so very well, is control her range and really just kind of draw a lot of emotion out of the music, or certainly out of the lyrics. And it feels like it has to be. It's this idea that people hold back feelings for somebody, they don't make that move because they may not feel it be right. So again, has those wider implications despite being very personal to her. And musically, it's just a very soft track, and I think it's placed quite well in the album. We have got a mixture really blending, and we've got these angsty elements, we've got these rocker elements and these pop elements, and I like they're really showing a diverse mix of different styles on the album. Then in at track 9 we do have Crave, which is a song all about making peace with her journey so far. We've seen that in previous tracks and in previous albums, the struggles that she has gone through as the frontwoman of the band, the amount of people that are constantly piling pressure on her, and this is a very melancholic track, and it has one verse of past and one verse of present, and it's great because this ties together her past, her present. Obviously she can't really tie in the future because it's not been discovered yet, but I like that it's her coming to terms with everything that's happened in her life and really feeling like she's finding throughout the course of this album, she's kind of reflecting on her journey and really just kind of looking at all the things she's been through, all the things she's done, and it shows a lot more certainty than tracks such as C'est Comme Ça. It feels like she's really evolving just throughout the album. It's almost like a story in itself of her just going over these memories in her head. So I like this track in the way that it does that. It does include a couple of interesting elements on the musical side as well, with more New Order style guitar really thrown in. They do make good use of that, which just adds another layer to the song. Then for the outro we do have Thick Skull, which is a song all about self-blame. It is a very reflective track, and it was actually the first song to be written for this album. It talks about the insecurities that Hayley Williams did project onto herself because of what she was being told, those outside influences really just kind of bringing her down, putting that pressure on her as the front woman to kind of be this idol, to be this role model. And what I love about this track is they do a couple of instrumental things that I think are really smart. So you've got this very soft piano with Hayley's soft vocals, but you've also got these very thick drums, and I like the idea of it's almost like it's treating like a metaphoric skull. It's almost like she's in her own head just trying to calmly lullaby herself, and then these thick drums provide almost this outside noise, this outside influence that are kind of banging against her skull. So musically it's very clever how they've actually pieced this track together. I think it is very smart in the way that they've done that with the thick drums, because it is the only song on this album where they've actually used that tool and they use it to great effect. So it's almost like this peaceful room with all this noise on the outside, and I like the way that the two don't really clash too heavily. They don't drain into each other. They are almost acting as separate entities, and that's what I love so much. It's almost like you've got these two parts on the same song that are running side by side rather than being mashed together, and it really does make a strong outro, because this song is definitely all about her leaving all her burdens behind and looking forward to the future, again adding to that idea of progression throughout the course of this album. Overall, I was very, very impressed with this album. I wasn't so sure after we'd heard songs such as C'est Comme Ça. I wasn't really overly keen on that track. I did feel it was overly repetitive, but I really enjoyed her kind of revolving as a person. She's kind of hit that midlife, and she's really kind of starting to adapt and really kind of push herself forward, moving from that mental side that we saw on After Laughter, and it's great to see the maturity in the songwriting as well. I do really love a lot of the ways that she's constructed a lot of these songs around ideas. I mean, some of the songs are a little bit on the kind of activist side, maybe pushing a bit too much of an agenda, probably Big Man Little Dignity, because obviously that can be kind of aimed at a certain type of people or a certain group of people, and I think obviously it's one of those songs that can at times kind of really show her activism side, maybe on a bit of a strong note as well. So could have maybe been a little bit softer rather than being a bit more universal. But musically, I just think this is a very strong album. It's much stronger than I was actually maybe expecting after the singles we had heard at the beginning, and I like that they've kind of covered a variety of different styles on the album as well. It was much more impressive, just their ability to kind of move between different styles. I mean, I think I personally preferred the second half of the album because it gave Hayley Williams more room to play around with her vocals. As much as I didn't mind the punchy delivery of some of the earlier tracks such as The News, I don't feel it played to her strength all too much, which is great to see them really just trying a variety of different things and including a lot of metaphor into the actual album to really make it work. So overall, I'm going to have to give this album a very deserved 8 out of 10. I think lyrically it's very, very strong in one of the messages it's trying to convey, making it universal but also remaining personal to Hayley Williams. I think musically as well, it is quite a strong album. There's definitely some parts that do feel a little bit lacking, and a couple of the tracks are slightly overly repetitive or a little bit bland that could maybe have done with just a few more varied lyrics thrown in, probably mainly C'est Comme Ça. Despite that hook in the lyric, that very simple chorus to understand, I just think it gets a little bit too much on the ears once you've heard it for a couple of minutes or heard it for the second or third time. But certainly a very strong return to form. I'm glad to see kind of Hayley Williams putting everything in a box, building this story in the album, and really shipping it off ready to move into the future with whatever their next album may bring. But it is great to see her drawing her past to a close, being settled in the present, and having hopefully a very prosperous future going forward. I like that they've covered that throughout this album. So that will be everything for today's video, but as always, please let me know your thoughts about the album in the comment section below. Let me know your favourite track. I think for me actually it's probably got to be You First. I really enjoyed the punchiness of that track, the idea of the good over evil and the use of the old Cherokee parable, the two wolves, really just kind of really made it a very strong song, encapsulating everything inside of a parable and a message. But I would love to know your thoughts, and as always, if you want to see more content like this, then please do feel free to subscribe, and I will see you in the next album analysis.